He's probably not hearing me. That should be there. Desktop, hold on. Nobody has audio. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have it set to the right thing. Okay, I knew it was going to have technical issues. Let's see if that works.
I totally hear you.
Okay.
Oh, nope.
Carla! Okay, yeah,
Carla!
I had audio settings set badly, so that's on me.
Breathe in. All right, hang on. My headset's about to die, so I'm just going to
Okay.
go speakers here. What's this? Back to streaming? Also, I hear
Sister
nothing.
Carla's
So we probably got
here.
that fixed.
I am back to RetroRoots. I do not know about the rest of my streaming schedule. I don't have a streaming schedule right now. One of the things I want to do before I start streaming, you should be able to in just a few minutes. You might need to catch up to real
Carla.
live time, Luke. Sorry, that's kind of on me. I had some erroneous stuff set up. I didn't have my Rodecaster enabled, and my desktop was set to the wrong input. I knew I was gonna have some technical issues. It's been a while since I streamed.
That's all right. I need to give me a second because I need to open up.
Luke. Oh, that's just dirty pool, man. That's just dirty pool. I see how it is. I see how it is. He's just messing with me now. Hey, Carla needs your shirt. I got a one finger salute for you, Luke.
Luke quickly switched back over to YouTube.
Yeah, I don't think Luke was digging the Rumble scene. And
no, he was in the chat earlier. He was in my chat earlier.
If you're down for that, then it's cool, and it's a little bit more political than other platforms. And if you're not down for that, that's not cool. You know.
No, he was. I'm just saying he was in my chat earlier.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he used both.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's just funny that he popped over. All right, don't worry, Galaxy. I'll keep you company over here.
You might have to like refresh it or something, man, because I just refreshed it and now it's just hanging for no apparent purpose.
Hang on.
But it shows that
it's live.
Active.
Yeah, it's live.
Is it? Okay, because it's freezing on my browser over here.
Oh, yeah, it's freezing for me now too.
Awesome. Fantastic. Everything's going according to plan.
Welcome back, Nick. Welcome back.
I did not miss this. I did not miss this part.
I'm also here too. I get around. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the hell's wrong.
I don't know. I show live. I was live.
I show live too, but it
shows I have viewers, but it appears to be freezing all the time, so I have no idea what's going on.
It does.
I'm gonna close out of it and come back into it and see what it does. All right. So anyway, for those of you guys on the YouTube side, everything actually appears to be working there. Because like
all right, scrambles, Badman, Metal Torso,
it
Carla,
to be more stable there.
Everybody
in his house, and it's still freezing over there. All right, so I'm gonna try to stop on the Rumble side and start it again and see what it does. Stop. Start. Failed to connect to stream. Seriously. Okay, let's see. Let's see what it does. All right, I don't know if we're live again or not. It's just it came back right when Nick stopped it. Jesus. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Rumble always does this to me. I always.
No, I think we're okay.
It always
hates
me.
It's live. It's live and it's moving. It's live and it's moving. We're okay.
Does not want me dual streaming. It hates that.
No, it's okay now. It's up. It's good. All right, let me get that chat popped out.
Carla's just here with the popcorn watching the chaos because we're back and it's everything else.
This is the chaos.
Okay.
And in true chaos fashion, we had everything all lined up, and then 9/9 happened.
Yeah, I had everything lined up for a totally different show tonight, guys, and this was going to be organized. We were going to start getting like guests on. We were going to have shows planned in advance. And, I had all these good things planned to remove the stress out of my life for streaming, actually, to try to make it fun. And then 9/9 happened. And of course, it's Sega. So Mike needs to talk Sega. So Mike talks Sega. There you go.
Well, okay. So it's not my fault today is 9/9.
I totally blame you for today being 9/9.
I mean, it is kind of funny that, I wasn't even thinking about it. And I wasn't even thinking at the time that this was also the 25th birthday of the Dreamcast. I mean, this is kind of a big, and I wouldn't have thought about it had Peter Moore not posted something on X yesterday.
Yeah, and then I saw everybody else going nuts on it, and I'm like, all right, no, this is fair. We are a retro means modern podcast, right? So, and it is the 25th anniversary of the Dreamcast. So, and usually on average, we can just kind of talk Dreamcast for the most part. I can talk it from a more technical perspective and from where my headspace was when it came out. And you can talk it from the journalistic perspective because that's where you got a lot of your start in the gaming journalism area as well. It was around that time.
Not just that, but I am still a Sega fan. I am too, though nobody would actually think it from the way I talk about Sega because they did a lot of dumb stuff. Well, of course they did a lot of dumb stuff, and it hurt.
They were like the Atari of our generation, really. There was Atari who did all the dumb shit because nobody knew any better, and so they just did stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it hurt
and Sega, who had the benefit of past experience and still did all the dumb shit.
And it hurt. it hurt it hurt the Dreamcast in a way that, unfortunately, as good as the Dreamcast was, they couldn't recover from. That's just the sad sad of it.
I kind of wish we'd had a Dreamcast 2 or Dreamcast 3 that had come out in like 2009. But no, the first one dropped in 99, man. It was 9999.
Yep. 9999.
And honestly, I don't think anybody saw that console coming. Like, none of us saw this console coming. Like, at all. To kind of give you guys a scope of the landscape of what Sega was kind of fighting around this time before we get too hardcore into it. They'd had the Genesis, which had done really well for them. And then they had kind of marred it a little bit with a lot of low support and under-received attachments, right? Power converter, which didn't have a very long lifespan because they started pulling all the Sega cards off the shelves for the Master System. So and retro gaming stores weren't really a thing back then. It wasn't a big market because nobody thought anybody was going to go backwards around this time. Nobody was thinking about it. So
no.
It was very hard to get a hold of these unless you found them at yard sales and stuff like that. And a lot of times people just weren't picking them up. Now, that was at launch. The Sega CD, which was both kind of a hit and miss kind of attachment. It had a lot of hits. It had a lot of kind of subpar stuff. And overall support was kind of a little tricky with that one. And then you had the 32X, which honestly suffered more from the fact that it ended up launching on the same day that the Saturn launched in Japan. It was intended to be an extension for the Genesis lifespan, particularly in the United States, until the Saturn could come out. And then they sort of rushed the Saturn launch, and the 32X just got forgotten about. Basically, it got dropped by the wayside. Now, that's not to say it didn't have titles. I think it had, something like 30 titles, Mike?
It did. And when they utilized it correctly, it was a hell of a little system because it had, although lower clock speed, it had the same dual 32-bit chips that the Saturn had, just running at a different clock speed. I didn't bring any 32X games over because we weren't really. This is just kind
No,
of
no, no. This is just
secondary.
kind of
But
getting us up to
right,
where the Dreamcast launched and why it was so weird, right?
there were, I would say, 4 or 5 top flight 32X games that really took advantage of the hardware. Um, and there were clunkers. There were plenty of clunkers. The most rare and expensive game in the 32X library, which is still sitting at around $1,400-ish, if you can get it, um, is Spider-Man Web of Fire. And I've streamed Spider-Man Web of Fire
Yeah, that
multiple
is not a
times
very good
now.
game.
It is
I love the
horrible.
name and I love the cover art, but that is not a very good game.
It's not, but it's rare as all get out because there wasn't a lot made. It was made towards the end of the life of the 32X, and it was an official Marvel game, which was also an official Sega title. Like, it was in-house Sega, and it was Marvel, and it was licensed in the whole 9 yards. All that said, there were games like Zaxxon Mother Base 2000,
Kids, do your
which
parents know you're streaming? Go to bed.
there was Doom. Wasn't the best version of Doom, but it was
You could say
pretty
that
good.
about
It
a
was
lot of versions of Doom. There's times where
true.
I look at the versions of Doom out there and go, wow, the Super Nintendo kicked all your asses.
Yeah,
How?
yeah. The only one that I felt was the best version was the Jaguar version, and that's the one that John Carmack actually worked on.
Right. Didn't that one have missing
Um,
audio or something like that on it? Like the music didn't play?
I think the Jaguar didn't have the music.
Yeah, I don't think it had the music, but the sound effects, the guns, all that stuff sounded good, and it looked really good.
Everything else was there
Yeah,
and in
yeah.
rare form. But there were 5 or 6 games. Sonic Chaotic or Knuckles Chaotix,
Knuckles Chaotic.
um,
Yeah, that's a bizarre game.
Virtua Racing,
Yeah,
Virtua Fighter,
Virtual Fighter,
Mortal Kombat
which
2.
sadly
There were
launched on the Saturn the day it launched on the 32X.
I
And
know.
that's what was going to move it. If anything was going to move the 32X, it was going to be Virtual Fighter. And it really did need to move it in Japan first, because Japan was that was the driving force on the market. You had to understand, the weird thing with Sega is they were always more popular in the States, like the United States and like Britain and other areas like that, than they were in their own country. Nintendo dominated in Japan. The closest that anybody came to beating them was the uh, shit. I'm forgetting what the TurboGrafx was called there. The whatever the TurboGrafx was called in Japan. I'm drawing a blank right now.
The NEC. Crap. Hang on.
Yeah, like I said, I'm drawing a blank. Either way, they were basically neck and neck with Nintendo for a while there because they had the games, right? So
Yeah.
the 32X launched, the Saturn
PC
launched.
Engine. PC Engine.
PC Engine. That's it.
It's PC Engine.
Chuck would slap me for not remembering that.
I know.
And as the Saturn launched, it started putting Sega in kind of a bad foot because they had a lot of products out. You had the Game Gear, you had the Game Gear television adapter, you had the 32X, you had the Sega CD, still had the power converter on sale, I think. You had 2 versions of the Genesis running in tandem at the same time. You had the old version and you had the new version. On top of that, you had the Saturn, which launched exclusively with like Toys R Us early and pissed off a lot of retailers. So a lot of retailers just stopped carrying Sega.
Yep.
And everybody
Maybe
had so
toy and
many
hobby.
attachments and so much weird crap coming in with Sega. And while Nintendo's notorious for having a lot of attachments that don't necessarily work, they had toned a ton of that down by the time the Super Nintendo came out. So a lot of their weirdness and incompatibility issues outside of like the Super Scope, which had like maybe 3 games for it, were kind of tamped down. So most of what they were launching was solid. And you had a lot of competition in the market. So they started getting kind of a bad rap. And they were also hemorrhaging money by sustaining all these things and development of games on all of them. And stock space and production and shipping and everything else that goes along with doing consoles. So they were in a bad way. Their arcade was starting to tank. They needed money. And they didn't have any. So they're like, okay, the Saturn's not doing as well as we'd hoped it would do. We need a new, and arcade's doing bad. These other products aren't moving like they were in the past. We're going to be bankrupt. We got to do something. So we need a console, and we need it now. So they started working on the Dreamcast. So that was kind of a long way of getting back to the Dreamcast. But that's kind of where the Dreamcast came from, was from a perspective of, we poor and we need money. We need a console to prop up our arcade franchise. That's legit where it came from.
Well, they needed a Hail Mary is what they really needed.
They absolutely did.
You know, it was really
also the hype around the PS2, including the rumor that they planned on buying 100% of PS2s and plans to make a supercomputer, took the win out of the Dreamcast sales. Yeah, that was later on. The Dreamcast launched shortly after, I want to say, the PlayStation. Yeah, because PlayStation was 95.
Right.
N64 was like 96 in the States, I want to say.
Something like that.
Because it launched after the PlayStation.
Right.
The Jaguar was out around that time. The 3DO was out around that time. The CDI was out around that time. The Neo Geo was out around that time. So you had all these things in the market and across the huge swatch of the price range. I mean, people complain about $70 games now, but we were all playing $80 for N64 games. People were paying $200 for Neo Geo carts. People were paying like $200 for CDI games. The CDI itself was like $1,000. The 3DO was $400 to $500, and games were like $40 to $50 a piece for it. PlayStation, which kind of destroyed the Saturn at its launch, because Sega came out and said $400 for the Saturn, and Sega came out and said
$299,
$299,
$299, and walked off.
And just walked
and
off.
You know, it had.
So they had the wind knocked out of their sails before they even launched the Saturn.
Yep. Had the Saturn launched on time when they were supposed to. I'm not sure.
They did, Galaxy, but the Wii worked out for them actually quite well, and the Switch works great, even though it's a hybrid console. And honestly, I think the Wii U is a highly underrated system, personally. What's up, Rock? How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Hey, Rock. You know, there were other things that doomed the Saturn, or that doomed the Dreamcast along with the Saturn, but there were some other things that happened within. You know, they ran out of chips. You know, there was a stock shortage. They couldn't get. You know, I often wonder what would happen if they ended up using, and I say this as a 3DFX guy from the old PC days.
Didn't they go with like a Power PC chip instead of like the NVIDIA chip that they were originally going to go with? They had two designs for the Dreamcast hardware-wise.
They did. The SH4 was what they. I mean, it's really what they wanted, and that was fine. You know, that would have been fine with the NEC stuff. I have one,
but having another tablet would be dope, Scrambles. I'm not gonna lie.
You know, the Power PC chip wasn't a bad chip.
They were a metal torso. Chrono Trigger was $80. I think Killer Instinct might have been too. Sorry, and then catching some of the comments.
No, that's okay. You know, believe it or not, as much as Bernie Stolar gets crap for some of the things that he did, and later, you know, left right before the Dreamcast launched, had he gotten his way, the Dreamcast would have looked different. And while fantastic system we're going to talk about, I often wonder what the Voodoo 2, the 3DFX Voodoo 2 chips would have done for the Dreamcast. I think
the American revision of it was better, personally. And again, that's here has been Sega's problem throughout the years. In a nutshell, one, they focused on their arcade. They focused on their arcade to the detriment of their consoles. And they would use their consoles to primarily promote their arcade, because that's where they came from. That's where they were strongest. Two,
yes.
They would not listen to Sega of America.
Yep.
America was their biggest market.
Yep.
And Britain followed closely behind and followed in lockstep in a lot of ways with American tastes. And to ignore those two markets, which were like 3 to 8 times bigger than their Japanese market was
Yep.
just lunacy. And they did it because it was always Japan first. They were always
Yep.
Japan first. If Japan doesn't do well, then we're a failure. And I'm like, no, they sold way more Genesis units, double to triple the Genesis units in the United States than they did in Japan.
Yep.
They sold
And what's
way more
funny is,
32Xs. They sold, I think, more Saturns. They sold more of everything in the United States. They
yeah,
were an American loved company first
you
and
know,
foremost.
it's funny because the on the U.S. side, they had a great guy in Tatsu Yamamoto to build the console. He's the one who wanted the Voodoo 2. He's the one who wanted the Power PC chip, which I had no problem with them using that. Sega of Japan wanted the NEC chip, and to the I mean, they that pissed off not only 3DFX, who sued them, but
Yes.
EA, right? EA wanted the 3DFX stuff too. Now, that wasn't the killing blow for EA. The next part of EA's walking away from Sega was what I was playing
And
prior to.
Torso, I cannot remember it. I know the Voodoo 3 was close, but I don't know if they were planning to put a Voodoo 3 in there.
They were all, no, they were out. They were going to put a Voodoo 2 in it. It's the Voodoo 2 and the Banshee that they were looking at. The
Yeah.
Banshee was kind of like, um, the Banshee was kind of a combo 2D 3D card. They were gonna what they wanted to do was, 'cause I remember talking to a couple people
Ooh,
at
nice
Sega
scrambles.
about this.
I'd probably take
Um,
a second black one if I was going to get another one.
oh
We may
yeah.
talk later, scrambles.
Um, they wanted so they wanted to look at the Banshee. The problem is the Banshee was their newest chipset. It they didn't want to make the same mistake they had made with the Saturn, which was they built the thing for 2D and then they had to tack on a 3D chip later. The Voodoo Banshee was both of those in one. It had 2D for all the stuff that they wanted to do there, and then it also had the Voodoo 2 hardware in it.
Yeah, and the reason the Saturn was built for 2D is because they were doing it. They were doing it based off their AM2 technology, which was their next arcade board. They
And
wanted the
right, the arcade.
Saturn to bring almost one-to-one arcade quality to their home console, right? And they wanted it to promote their arcade business again, right? So they primarily
Right.
focused it around that. And about the time it dropped is when the N64 and the PlayStation started pushing everything towards the 3D market. And so
Right,
right
because
as those came out,
company
they went,
right,
"Oh God,"
because
and
companies
quickly
like
tacked on a
Namco.
3D chip onto their existing Saturn, which is why certain things on it perform like a lot of 2D stuff will perform a lot better, and a lot of 3D stuff will struggle on it
Mhm.
because it was not originally intended for to be
Correct.
able to do 3D. Um,
And that's and you know that's not having the foresight to
right. They
to
didn't see where
understand
the
because,
market was going. They didn't look to see what people were planning. They're like arcade, arcade, arcade.
well, it
And
wasn't even just that though. It was their biggest competitor in the arcades was Namco, and Namco was readying Ridge Racer,
right.
and that was the move to 3D that Sega didn't anticipate. And and again, to your point, not every a lot of the 3D stuff didn't do as well when it was built for the hardware.
Hmm.
And Yu Suzuki did a he pulled a rabbit out of his butt and created these great programming libraries for the Saturn, and that's how you got Virtua Fighter 2, which which is 90%, and I say that with confidence, 90% one-to-one with the arcade,
Yeah.
with the exception of the backgrounds being 2D because they had to.
Yeah, and it was
But
probably easier to do that because that way you could flex the original chip to do that and not have to
yes,
worry about
but that
building that.
game, and I say this in the video, I have a Saturn video that I need to do a second one, but I said then and I say it now, Virtua Fighter 2 ran better on the Saturn than it had any right to.
Yeah. So long story, well,
So,
short story long because we're
short
30
story
minutes into the
long.
stream. All these things led to problems when the Dreamcast was coming in. Multiple models, low income, no money for marketing. There were problems with EA because they approached EA to start bringing sports because they had started building a big sports brand starting with the Genesis, and they continued that on
Yep.
through the years. So it was one of the smartest things they did with Sega of America was starting to really market heavily into sports games. So they had bought a bunch of companies. 2K was one of them, or what would become 2K Sports,
Right. Visual
and had
concepts.
it under Sega Sports. And then Bernie Stellar came up to EA and said, "Hey, we'd like you to have your sports games on our console." And they said, "Great, we want to be the only ones doing sports games on there." And he's like, "I just bought all these studios and put them under Sega Sports. That's not going to happen." He's
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to do that. I didn't spend all this money to just ditch these studios." And they're like, "Well, then you don't get any of our games." So they lost a lot of EA's games from the
They
jump.
lost all of EA's games.
All their sports games. Not all their games entirely, because there were EA games on the console. But EA
Not
Sports,
on the
not on
Dreamcast.
the Dreamcast.
Not on the Dream. There
They
were
didn't have any
no.
EA? I thought they had some.
Nope. Not a one. In fact, I remember there was a magazine. One of my favorite magazines of that era was Next Generation magazine. And every month they had, like all magazines did, the first page was a letter from the editor, right? The editor's note. And they allowed um, Dan Riticello, who I believe at the time was the president of EA, to write a um, an editor's note at the beginning of the things. And they laid out that they not only were they not going to they were not only not going to support the Dreamcast, their goal was to put Sega out of business. They were that mad.
Yeah, they
That
were
mad
they
about it.
were pretty pissed at Bernie. And Torso, you're not wrong. 2K actually really started putting the screws to EA with sports games.
Oh yeah.
They came from doing a bunch of them from Sega when they kind of went off with another when started doing their own thing. They took all that legacy knowledge, all that ability to be able to build those games, and started really taking it to EA. And so you had like proper sports games really starting to come out of a much higher quality for a long time. Unfortunately, they've all kind of degraded down, I feel like, over
Yep.
the years. Not in fidelity, but just in like, you'll see like 2K23 on 2K24 and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot
And it
of.
was Larry Probst. I just had to quick look it up. John Riticello didn't come in until 2007. It was Larry Probst that was part of that
Yeah.
99. So and what's funny is you're not only absolutely right on that, Nick, but ESPN NFL 2K5, which Sega sold for $20 on Xbox and PlayStation. It was an Xbox. Was that OG? I think that was an OG Xbox and PlayStation 2 game. It was basically NFL 2K4, but
Mm-hmm.
ESPN was the first one that they had ESPN on it. Had Chris Berman and the whole. It was an unbelievable game. It started to take market share away from EA, and the only way that EA was able to counter that was to get NFL to sign an exclusivity agreement with them to give them rights to sports simulation games.
Yeah. So you
That's
had
the
all
only
this
way.
going on around the Dreamcast, and one of the problems with the Dreamcast was its marketing budget. That was a big part of its problem. Now, if you're really into video game magazines, you saw a lot about it. but a lot of the normal TV advertisements were kind of shy in the early days. A lot of normal like pinup posters and stuff like that that would be in like bigger box stores and things like that weren't there. Even trying to get the goodwill back to be able to get their consoles back in these stores like Best Buy and Walmart that they had severely ticked off and refused to carry them because of the Saturn, they had to make amends with and try to get back in them because the United States without Walmart especially, you're in deep doo doo.
Well, Walmart sold the Saturn. It was KB Toy and Hobby, and you don't necessarily think KB Toy and Hobby is a
They were in
huge
all the malls
franchise,
though.
but it was
They were
exactly
in every
every
mall.
mall had a KB Toy and Hobby,
Yeah.
um, and that hurt them more than anything. Um, and to your point too, that's also why they fired Bernie Stolar, among other things. His feud with Victor Ireland at
They absolutely
Working
did, Batman.
Designs. Have a good night, Batman.
Oh no, he's not leaving. He just said they had
Oh, I
really
thought he
good
was leaving.
clearance sales.
Oh yeah. Oh, KB, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were leaving. I'm not looking at the
No, say
chat.
he's not going to bed. Not yet,
I'm not looking at the
anyway.
chat. Um, but Peter Moore, Peter Moore saved Sega as a company. They didn't. He couldn't save. He couldn't save the Dreamcast. He couldn't save them as a hardware guy. He just didn't. He came in. By the time he came in, it was 1999. He was given a bad hand. He made
Oh
the
yeah.
best of it. But what he did to get the Dreamcast launched, some of the like the magazine ads were one thing. You're right, but there were that whole It's Thinking set
I
of
thought that was a pretty good campaign. I
yeah,
didn't think
where
it was
they
good as the Sega Screen campaign, but it's still a pretty good campaign.
getting like bringing the whole CGI thing where they brought the camera into the Dreamcast and all the
Mm-hmm.
characters are there, but that also cost them a ton of money. The one thing that they did do, which it's a shame, was even with all the issues they had picking the hardware, going, they did build that thing cheaply. It wasn't the console that was losing them the money, because that console was very inexpensive to build, which is why they could sell it for $200, which was unheard of at the time. But it didn't have a lot of heavy machinery in it. In fact, I had read in one of the interviews that I had read shortly after it was in Next Generation magazine. It was one of my favorite magazines. They told developers that if you could develop games for a a Pentium 2 computer, you could make games for the Dreamcast. So it was really easy to develop for. The GD-ROM, and I know there's conversation about whether or not the GD-ROM was also a mistake, because the PlayStation 2 went with DVD,
Right.
which also made it a DVD player, we all know that. But
Yes.
the GD-ROM,
But that was also, I think, Sony's format too. I think DVD was theirs, right?
it
I know
was
Blu-ray
they
was.
had the conglomerate. They had a
Yeah.
conglomerate. Sega could have gone with it. It wasn't owned by Sony. It was part of like a bigger conglomerate. But I don't know if people know this, but the GD-ROM drive was actually developed by Yamaha, and so they could mass produce that cheap, and so it kept the cost of the system down, and that was a help.
It also had some loopholes that allowed people to be
It
able
did, and that is
to
what
craft
turned out to
games.
be what it
And
turned out to
that was
be
one of the other problems. And Torso had a statement here of,
probably the
I always
biggest
wondered if
problem.
dual analog sticks on the Dreamcast controller would have given it a boost. And I think it would have as games developed.
Yeah,
The way it
I
originally came out Like, I could
I
see
can agree with
Sonic
that.
Adventure being much better with a second analog stick, but no one had really done that at the time. If you recall, the original PlayStation itself didn't have an analog stick.
It
The
did
original
not.
controller didn't. Now, about 2 years after its initial launch in 1997, the first Dual Shock launched. Now, that was for the original PlayStation. Um, and that kind of started radically changing the game right there. But that didn't come out until 97. Now, so you had that example, but it wasn't as well used and wasn't really the standard in gaming, right? Until right around the Xbox and the PlayStation 2. Matter of fact, I think Xbox was the first one to have it standard on their controller at launch because I think it came out just before the PlayStation 2, I think.
Right.
And so that was standard on theirs, and PlayStation 2 followed suit because they had their dual analog. The DualShock 2 launched with the PlayStation 2, and so you had dual analogs on there from the get go. And that's when everybody started using the second analog stick for camera and the first analog stick for movement. Up until that time, the best example that they had of 3D was off the N64. So they had just taken that central analog stock and moved it off to the left hand side where it was more convenient and less cramped, which was a great idea. It made the controller very, very comfortable, and the D pad was still in a very good and very accessible place to where you could really utilize both parts of the console very effectively.
Right.
So at the time, the design was pretty inspired. Seeing them adapt a dual analog, I think, would have been great. But I think by the time that they had this console out for as long as they'd had it, and the thought of that would have come to mind, they had already dug such a deep hole that they wouldn't have had the funds to develop it and to get it out and to try to get games to work on it would have been incredibly difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because you would have had this disparity in this works best with this controller. So now people feel like they have to buy a totally different controller in order to be able to utilize it. And I think that would have caused them more pain as well.
Well, and depending on the game, most of the games, because they were
Oh my God,
still
Scrambles. Cut
pushing it
himself on a piece of
arcades.
titanium today at work and starting to bleed through two different bandages.
Oh, good lord!
Jeebus, man.
Ouch!
So yeah, I'm
Damn.
just playing some of the Sega Dreamcast It's Thinking commercials in the background while we're talking, if you guys are wondering.
Yeah, these were awesome commercials. They really were. Um, I mean, if you think about the arcade thing, everybody had always and I never blamed Sega for this because they did have many other games in the library that weren't arcade games, but they
Oh,
did
the
lean on
Dreamcast
their
had a
arcade.
great mix of games.
It
That
did.
launch library, we'll talk about that in a minute. That was, oh
Yes.
my God.
Even like the game I played first when I was streaming earlier,
Yeah, the Pen
Ben
Pen.
Ben Triathlon. It was just
Yeah.
a quirky little fun little game,
Yeah, that's
right?
not what I think I would have picked up around that time because I think me around that time would have looked at that and not really
And
found it appealing. But looking
sure,
at it now, I'm like, that's a fun little game.
it really was, and I was having fun with it. I was probably too a little. I was probably too little too good at it for today. But those are those are the those are the breadth of games that they had were it was. I think that they they needed to keep that going as long as they could, which they did. But I think too that how do I put this? Had they, I often wonder what would happen had they had stayed at least some of their course. I know they had to give up, and I wish they didn't, because I tend to wonder. Okay, let's say they just kept pushing. What would have happened to them? I don't know the
Honestly, I
answer.
thought they had enough of a library because I had, in the short I want to say 2, maybe 3 years I had that console before because it was like 3 years before the original Xbox came out. And in that time, I had like 30 games or more on the Dreamcast. There are consoles now, like my PlayStation 5, I don't think I even have 10 total.
I hear you.
So the
I'm
almost every single launch title, I think when that system launched, I went home with like 5 or 6 games. Day one. Day one.
mhm.
And there was like 4 or 5 more I couldn't afford. I'd saved up like crazy because I was completely disillusioned with Sega around the time of the Saturn, right?
Sure.
I really was just burned out. I didn't think they supported anything really well, not to the way I'd like it. And even though I liked Sega as a company, I just didn't trust them. So I wasn't real sure that I wanted to really invest in their console, right? And then I started seeing the stuff that was coming out on it, and I'm like, oh my god, you have Soul Calibur. Oh my god, look at Power Stone. I've never seen anything like this before.
Mhm.
Oh my god, you got like Hydro Thunder. Holy crap. Sonic Adventure? What the hell? I've never
Right.
seen a Sonic game like this. This looks amazing. And it was just hit after hit after hit after hit. And all of those are classics now. Every single one of those are coveted classics. Matter of fact, I'm super stoked that Power Stone 1 and Power Stone 2 are actually going to be able to hit modern consoles here pretty soon. In 2025, in fact. Yeah.
I'm
Because
glad
what
people are
made it
going to get a
special was the
chance to
games.
play
It's,
that.
it's a wide variety of games and ones that were fun. And a lot of new IPs, too. You had stuff like Evolution. You had stuff like Blue Stinger, which was
Blue
shockingly
Stinger.
good. I
Yep.
didn't expect anything out of
Carrier.
that game when I rented it one day, and it was actually pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah. Carrier. You had uh uh
Techromancer was another amazing one that I don't remember hitting in any other
Illbleed.
platform. That's a
And by the way,
phenomenal game.
it was one of the first systems to get a form of Grand Theft Auto. It had GTA 2 on it.
Yeah, Crazy Taxi, which you were
Crazy
playing earlier
Taxi, which we
today.
played earlier.
Yeah, he
Um,
was the same. Metal Sources said he was the same. I bought way more for the Dreamcast than any other system around the time. It was like one hit after another. Absolutely.
yeah,
And
it
had they stayed with it, they had a deep enough library that I felt like they probably could have kept pushing because I mean, like the best version of Street Fighter 3 came out on
mhm.
the Dreamcast, like bar none. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, that was like the best version of that game, came out on that console. Rumble in general, I think, is acting up. Born. I've seen it freeze a couple of times, just monitoring it on my other monitor here. But yeah, what were some of the ones that you had, Mike? Because I know we didn't have quite the same selection. I listed off a bunch of mine.
I mean, I had so keep in mind too that I at this point I was a review editor. So I was getting
Oh, you were
games.
probably getting advanced copies in of stuff
I was
too, weren't
getting
you?
well, not just that, but I was getting games review games as well. However, I bought a ton of the I bought a lot of the launch lineup from the import side. So for example, I had I had Sonic Adventure US, but I had Power Stone. I couldn't wait the 6 or 7 months to get Power Stone. I had to have it.
By the
So
way,
I
guys, if you have not played the game he's showing right now, hold on, let me put you in solo
oh
view. If you have not played this game, you guys need to keep an eye out for the Capcom Fighting Collection 2 that's coming in 2025. It's got Power Stone 1 and Power Stone 2. These games are insane amounts of fun. These games are ridiculously fun.
so I bought a large swath of the launch lineup
See, Scrambles,
from Japan.
I've got like 30 plus, I think, on my Switch now. And the Xbox One, I bought almost nothing for it. I think I might have 5 titles total. I didn't pick it up until Titanfall was bundled with it. And even then, I was pretty disappointed in the console outside of Titanfall. There just wasn't much on it that I didn't think the PS4 didn't do better. it was a pretty big disappointment at console, and I've been disappointed in at both consoles this current generation. To say that, not that there hasn't been some gems. I mean, like Astrobot looks like it's going to be amazing. God of War Ragnarok, I want to
I'm
pick
gonna
up.
play that next. So that's gonna be my next Sunday night stream.
I
I'm definitely
honestly
getting
think
Astrobot.
everybody's in our little group's going to be streaming. Expand is streaming it now. If I come back in on the streaming, I'll probably be playing that. Probably more Power Wash Simulator and stuff like that. I want to do some more stuff. I want to do. I'm gonna. Well, if I come back to streaming more often outside of RetroRoots, I'll probably set up another channel for it on Rumble. So you guys will have to be on the lookout via my account to see the new channel come up, and that'll probably be where the majority of the streaming goes. Because I want to keep the Geek Historian channel for history in this podcast. That's how it's designed on YouTube, and that's how I think it looks the best, and that's what flows the best on it. So I'll probably name the other one something else, like Geek Streams or something like that. I don't know yet. It'll probably be some sort of generic name, but something where I can do a variety of streaming and not feel like I'm cluttering up this channel with stuff that's going to make everybody very confused as to its identity.
I hear you. I mean, Peter and I kind of are doing kind of the same thing now. We've morphed our podcast into a part podcast, part game stream,
Yeah.
and I think that era of just sitting, not like I love this, but I think the era of Peter and I just sitting and talking about games for 3.5 hours and not getting much, outside of big news. Those days are over.
Yeah, this I want to try to keep it to like a tight 2 hours because I have to get up at like 5:30 in the morning on Tuesdays now.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So
I'm good
keeping
with
it to a
that
tight
as
2
well.
hours and then kind of going is probably where I want to keep this one because I think as we build this show the way I kind of originally wanted it to go and get us more in line with what we're going to do and get people lined up, I think we'll be able to say everything we need to say in that time period, and keep it a nice, clean, tight podcast. And I think that'll be good.
No, I agree.
And Metal Torso, you're not wrong. Power Stone makes that fighter collection worthwhile just for them. But Project Justice, I never got to play that one. I think that was a play on the PlayStation. That looks so fun. That and I always wanted Rival Schools, and I never had it because I never had a PlayStation. And
Rival
that's the
Schools
prequel
looks.
to Rival Schools. And
Yeah.
it looks like a blast, dude. There's so many on there. Some that I've played and some that I've seen, and a lot of them that I just haven't had my chance to get hands on that I really want. It looks like a great collection. And speaking of ones coming back, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 drops digitally in a couple of days, I think. And then it'll have a physical, I want to say, in November or December. Scramble's saying he had Doom 2016 and Eternal, but he had a bad time getting used to the controls. I find Doom infinitely more fun for me on PC. Mouse and keyboard where it's at for that game for me. Just my comfort level. My skill level on FPS, probably anybody with a controller who's good can kick my butt on it. But that's just where my comfort level is. Yeah, Scrambles, I found a direction on this one on my channel on YouTube, and I kind of want to keep things organized and clean that way if I can. It just works best for me, I feel like, personally. I'm going to make a new channel on Rumble. I'll probably make a new channel on Rumble for streaming, specifically Galaxy. I don't know when. I'll let you know on Discord, whatever I make it, so that way you can pop in. But I figured most people would just find it organically. And that'll just be how that goes. Any of the newer homebrew games? I have not. Mike, have you touched any of the homebrew games for the Dreamcast?
I have. Actually, I'll tell you what, give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Let me grab one because there's a great collection out there that you guys have to see. Hang on.
We have Mike doing show and tell. He's not quite as good as Papa Pete is on YouTube. Papa Pete can find anything in his collection in like 2 seconds. It's like magic. It's so bizarre.
He knows where they all are.
I know you know where they all are. They're just on the
He
other
knows
side of your
where they all are.
room.
No, I'm saying he knows where they all are. He's also right there where he can grab it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I even printed out. This is all printed
Oh,
out.
the
But this,
Cowabunga
the
collection. Really, I
Cowabunga.
forgot they put that on there. That's pretty cool. He does Metal Torso, but he also, I swear, you could blindfold him and tell it and say a game name, and he'd still find it. Like, he's just that good at it. It's crazy. Galaxy just noticed you're wearing a Dreamcast shirt. I need to play that collection more, man. It's such a good collection. I dipped into the original TMNT game, the one by Ultra Games, which was Konami, and I got to the dam level, and I think I got stuck there, but I didn't have very much left in the tank by the time I got there because that game's just relentless. It's a fun game. I like the game. It's not what you expect out of a TMNT game at all, but it's still fun. Scrambles needs to alphabetize his NES ones. My torso's green when the Papa Pizza Man. Galaxy has a very valid question here. Is that technically a homebrew, though? I have not muted you. I can hear him. I have not muted him. Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to hear him right now if the audio wasn't coming through right. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's see if that does it because I had it. Well, I had you on solo layout, which they should have been able to hear you then.
Yeah, they should have. But anyway, I have the for
You know what I think happened? I don't. Yeah, I think I know what might have happened here. Do 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 do. I had him on. I've got you on solo layout, and I think that's what's goofed up here. Hang tight, hang tight, hang tight. No, that's on Vio. They should be able to hear you there. I don't know why that's not coming through. On your solo layout, you're quiet. On the main layout, you're
okay. He
fine.
said
And I
now we
don't know
can
what's
hear it.
going on with that. Whatever.
He said now. He said I can hear it.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a solo layout that it's missing on. I don't know what happened. I've got some technical bugs to work out, guys. I'm sorry. We haven't done this show in months, and I haven't streamed in months, so we're gonna have some like weird technical glitches. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Well,
So
honestly,
with the
honestly, Born, I had this kind of
hey,
down
cousin born.
before we took a break, and now it seems to have like broken a couple things, even though they're set up properly. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. Yeah,
Well,
it's
so
bio. Yeah,
the
it should be working.
yeah, I think you can hear us now.
He can't on this scene. It's the other scene he can't.
Right. So what I was saying was the tank stick I have, the arcade stick that I typically use for my Thursday night at the arcade, and whenever I do the retro stuff.
Now I feel like Galaxy's messing with. We can only hear him when he's
Yeah, I
solo.
know. Um, I have
I'm
a
on to you, sir.
Dreamcast. I have a Dreamcast adapter for that stick, but of course, like when I play on Xbox, it doesn't have analog control, but I can of course map the analog control to the stick.
Yeah,
I
Galaxy's
wouldn't.
he's
I gotta
reiterating
try
his
that.
question because technically it's not really a homebrew, right?
Well, I'll tell you why I think it is. And Luke and I were having this conversation on X. What makes a homebrew? They don't sell this. You can just download this and get it. I think once you sell it, it stops being a homebrew. That's my opinion. Once you make money off of
I
it,
disagree there because there are plenty of them like the Intellivision and Televania that's
mhm.
sold. You can buy the physical card of that
Yeah,
on their site. That's a
I
homebrew.
don't. I don't consider it homebrew.
That's a homebrew.
I consider that a new game.
It is a new game, but it's a homebrew game. Flea is also homebrew, and it's
See,
also
okay,
sold.
All right. So my definition of Flea, like Tapeworm, which by the way is another great game by that same developer.
And
I
see,
consider
Galaxy's with me
those.
too. He also disagrees because these are new games that were made by the homebrew community that
I consider them
are
indie.
that are
If you
put on there.
sell it, I consider it an indie game because you are making money off of it. I consider it an indie game. You're an indie developer at that point. If you're just making stuff for people to download online and just play as they
You're
want,
thinking more ROM hacks then.
no, because this isn't a ROM hack. Somebody developed this. Somebody put this together.
Yeah, your
Um,
buddy who did the Atari 50th collection worked on that one too.
no, not the Dreamcast version. This is not the same as the no. This is a wholly different thing
Okay.
than
Because
digital.
it's got the
Digital
exact same
Eclipse
cover
did
art.
not put it. Yeah, well, because I printed it out. I just did a printout of it. Um, no, the Cowabunga collection on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch is Digital Eclipse.
Yeah,
This
they were the same ones
this
behind
was
the 50th
done.
collection.
Yeah, this was done by some dude, IMA Productions or IMA
Some dude.
Technology. Some guy, I don't even know who he is. It's some dude who put this together on the Dreamcast, and it's basically just an ISO you download from his site. He doesn't sell it. He doesn't make any money off of it. You can donate to him if you want, buy him a coffee or what have you. Whatever they do, the kids do these days. But you can otherwise just download this, burn it.
My kid's 50 is like, whatever those hippity hop kids do these days.
Right.
Happy belated birthday, by the way. Mike had a birthday over the
Oh,
weekend,
thank
if
you.
you guys didn't know.
Thank you. I forgot about it already.
And there goes Mike's memory. He's hit 50. Yay!
51. 51, which is why I forgot about it. My wife said, "What do you want for your birthday? What do you want to do for your birthday?" Nothing. Leave me alone. It's 51.
Lauren's
I'm
like,
now
Nick,
over
I'm not gonna
halfway to
fight
death.
now. I'll get my popcorn.
It
I'm gonna
wouldn't be
win because I can
RetroRoots
just
without
mute
it. It wouldn't be RetroRoots without it. Come on.
I can mute him. That's how I always win. See, Mike agrees with me. Never mind the man raging in the background. Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Uh,
Torso says, I think I understand Mike's point. If you make a game for free, it's homebrew. If you make it and you sell it on ROMs and physical mirror, you're now an indie developer. Kind of. I mean, it's kind of thing like most people who look at the new NES games that are coming out, they refer to them as homebrew games. That's kind of what they've been titled. They bought the physical cart, like the Garbage Pail game that came out on the NES, but is also for sale in the Steam store. A
well,
lot of people consider that kind of indie. Flea, a lot
and
of
like
people consider like
way back when
a lot of people
Coleco,
consider it homebrew.
tried to make a slight comeback and do that god awful Coleco Expo. They were also pimping a
Are you talking about the Coleco Chameleon scandal thing?
no. Coleco put on an expo. No. Coleco put on an expo like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I took Jacob to it. It was the worst expo I've ever been to. There were more vendors than people at this thing. It was horrible.
I remember that one. You showed me footage of that.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Pictures of that. That was sad,
Yeah,
dude.
it was sad. It was very sad. But they were selling what was that game series? It was kind of like an Indiana, like Rick Dangerous kind of Indiana Jones kind of thing. What was the name? It was shoot.
I mean, the only ones I can think of are like that are like Indiana Jones like or Tomb Raider and Uncharted.
No, but there was another.
But those are like AAA games too. Those aren't probably not the thing you're talking about.
It's not. And the name of the game is escaping me. Wait a minute. Hold on. Sydney Hunter. Sydney Hunter.
I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, it was I think Electrovision. I'm looking up Sydney Hunter now that
Okay.
I've got the name.
Galaxy says homebrews are basically unlicensed games created by the community that may or may not be sold. They
Yeah, I
usually
don't
are
agree with
not
that.
accepted by Nintendo, Sega, etc.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think if you sell it, you're an indie developer. If you Collector Vision is the developer of Sydney Hunter.
Well, I
I
feel
don't
like you and
consider
Galaxy are going to fight, and he's a Power Ranger, so my money's on him.
well, he's welcome to. But like on Steam, Collector Vision Games is listed as the publisher of Sydney Hunter Curse of the Jungle, for example. It's not a homebrew game. It's an indie game.
See, and even Torso's
I
starting to agree
consider
with
Flea.
Galaxy. You got like a gang coming for you now. I'm going to slime with some
Bring it on.
torches and some pitchforks and,
Bring it on.
maybe some
It's like the old
s'mores.
days. Like the old days. I'm good. So, but anyway, that's one of the homebrew games that I checked out for the Dreamcast. I know there are others, and that was also the big issue. And I'm not gonna lie, in the last, after the Dreamcast died out and you couldn't get it anymore, and they'd moved on and all that stuff, and I was getting started. There were some games that I had either sold or old friends that I don't talk to anymore. Um, uh, borrowed and never returned. Then I went ahead and I grabbed. You could grab ISOs of those things, and that was of anything that killed the Dreamcast. We were talking earlier about the Dreamcast could have kept going, it could have kept pushing,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't get around. They couldn't get around the pirating
Yeah,
because
the
that
pirating got to be pretty rampant.
and that killed their revenue. So
Yeah.
how can you, when you don't have the revenue on the games, they had no choice.
Yeah,
Had they been able to
they weren't
continue to
making
sell
money off.
games,
They weren't really making good money off the hardware. They were starting to lose money on the games because people were finding ways around paying for the games. Now that wasn't
exactly.
their only problem. They had so much debt before then that they needed every sale they could get just to stay afloat. And
They
so when they
did.
started when they started running the numbers, they're like, look, they finally came back to him, and I forget who it was that came back to him and said, look, we've run the numbers again and again and again. And we know you guys love having hardware. We know you guys have traditionally had hardware. You have it in your arcades. You have your consoles. You have your handhelds. Um, you're not very good at this. You really should go third party developer. Um, you don't have the cash flow to sustain what you have. You don't have enough. You don't have enough cash flow to sustain any of your products, much less the Dreamcast that you were hoping was going to pull you out of this because it just came out too late, right? It was just too little, too late to kind of pull them out of the nosedive that they were in. It's not that the console was bad; it's that it got hit with a number of problems. You didn't have enough money for marketing. Games were starting to kind of get copied over, um, and people weren't having to pay for them.
Right.
Windows CE wasn't exactly cheap, and it was on the console as part of the build. So that was, and they were also worried that that license might get pulled because there were rumors that Microsoft was going to enter into the video gaming foray themselves. So they were also worried about having to come out with a new revision of the console that wouldn't have Windows CE, which might have made it run a little bit better. Um,
It didn't. So interesting you say that, because if you and this is where Sega, if you ever notice the difference between um, a Japanese and an American Dreamcast or European Dreamcast, the import Dreamcast says
Thanks, Batman.
designed for Windows
Born,
CE.
there's a difference between emulation and a modern console, and there's a discussion to be had there that we can have in a little bit. Let's let Mike finish his thought though.
Um, the uh, the import Dreamcast, the Japanese Dreamcast says designed for Windows CE. The US Dreamcast and the European Dreamcast say compatible with Windows CE. And the reason is when they started to see Windows CE games running, because remember what I said earlier, that they told developers, if you could make a game for a Pentium 2 PC, and of course, using Windows, then you can make a game for the Dreamcast. That was the whole idea, right? And then it was going to open the door for all these games to go back and forth, right? And PC games that were out at the time, the Dooms and the Quakes and all that stuff, because Quake 3 Arena came over. So, there were games that could be made over.
So did Unreal Tournament.
Unreal Championship. No, Unreal Tournament was Unreal.
Well,
yeah,
one of the
I think it
versions
did.
of Unreal. It might have been Unreal.
I think it was just
a version of Unreal Tournament. Because I know Cy played it, and you could even go online with it.
Yes, it was. I'm trying to remember. Infogrames, I think, put it out on PS2 and Dreamcast. But as Sega started to see some of those games being developed with Windows CE, they started to realize that their own internal graphics libraries, the stuff that Sonic Team and Yu Suzuki and those guys were working on to create games, were way better. So not every game, in fact, not many games, to be honest with you, were made with Windows CE. And to be quite honest, and that's something I've shown in other streams that I've done, there's almost every time the Windows CE game has a lower frame rate, doesn't look as good, is missing things, whereas the games like we were playing earlier, even Pen Triicelon was sitting between 45 and 60 frames per second, right? Power Stone is a solid 60 frames per second. Sonic Adventure
I think that comes
doesn't
down
even
to
blip.
the fact that you're trying to run CE on top of hardware, that it's another layer between you and the hardware that's trying to translate the game, for one, right?
Yeah.
Which the consoles were never really built to do, for the most part. Like, even if you look at modern day consoles, they're tailor built to be able to share memory and RAM and graphical utilization and CPU utilization in ways that a PC won't.
Right, but at the same time,
because
the chipsets are basically
to overpower
chipsets.
that stuff by having more and better hardware.
Correct.
But a console that's built to do one thing very specifically.
But at its base, these consoles have PC hardware in them, whereas the older consoles did not. The Dreamcast did not. The PS2 did not. We didn't start getting those PC chips until PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Right, but even on the PlayStation 5, the way it's architected would not work. It's not a PC mentality in how it works, right? The way it's cold with the liquid metal is not something that you've seen in PC. The way it shares memory, the way it has your user interface at one point, and then it drops that out of memory and throws everything into the game when it goes into the game, and then pulls that back up when you come out of the game, right? There's a lot of stuff that it's doing to utilize its memory in clever ways that a PC on average won't do. Because it doesn't need to do that, right?
But at the same time, it's still just a customized AMD Zen 2 processor.
Right.
So it's not and the memory is just straight up GDDR6 memory.
Yeah,
it's not
standard memory.
There's nothing special about the hardware. It's all the pipe. It's how they throw it together.
Right.
So that's and the Xbox Series, the Xbox One on up was built with Jaguar chips that were pretty much off-the-shelf PC chips, so that they could go back and forth. And especially now, Microsoft can release games at the same time on PC and on Xbox without a whole lot of utilizing DirectX and the whole 9 yards. In fact, there was
PlayStation
the whole
struggles with that a little bit more because of their architecture and in part because of greed.
Well, and in part because Microsoft's not going to let them use DirectX.
Well, it's not like that. They can release it like a year, 2 years later, and charge $70 to $90 for it on PC and still get it.
Now, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
But yes, you are correct. That's a
that's
whole
what I
other,
mean by the grade. You can release it 2 years
well,
later and sell it at
you
full
know,
price when it's like $15 in the bargain bin.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it is kind of funny that the one console out of Microsoft's line that did not, um, that did not use an some sort of PC chip was the Xbox 360. Every other one, including the OG Xbox, was literally
yeah, the
a
OG Xbox
Pentium
was a
3.
PC in a box.
It was a Pentium 3 processor.
Yeah. Let's go back to Bourne's question here. He said, it's like saying emulation ruined game developers making money. And there's an argument to be made there both for and against. Emulation of older consoles doesn't hurt modern developers in any way. Now, when you start hitting the level of emulating Switch games on your PC, that absolutely does hurt developers. So, what they were doing with the Dreamcast is they were able to rip those ISOs off, and you were able to download them and put them onto disks and run them on the Dreamcast without paying the developers any money on a modern console with modern games. That's what I mean by the fact that that hurt them. This wasn't a
Yeah,
deprecated console that wasn't actively being sold anymore. This was their
correct.
flagship console.
Right. And people were pirating their games, which
Yeah.
they were selling. They were actively trying to sell.
So
That's
that's
that's the,
that's where the problem comes in. And the
that's the
same problem
difference.
is live and active on the Switch now, because a lot of people will emulate their Switch games on a Steam Deck or something like that, right? And that causes problems for Nintendo as far as sales. Now, did it massively hurt their sales? No, because it's freaking Nintendo, right? You got like 80 million units out there, but when you're looking at like 80 to 100 million units versus like maybe 10 to 20 million units total during the Dreamcast lifespan, and I think even that's a little high. It's a much different story, right? As far as how much damage can be done. Um, and so that's where the problem is. And the PlayStation, the PSP had a similar problem because people would buy that console and then they would crack it to do emulation and to basically play some of the PSP games without having to deal with the disc and having to pay any money for it. So they had a similar problem there too that actually hurt the PSP a bit.
And so, you can't, that's what I was talking about earlier. You can't sell a console and make money off of it while people are pirating the games right under your nose.
And at the time, everybody thought Sega was this big, huge company and they weren't hurting at all. So they're not really doing no harm, no foul here. They have tons of money. Well, at the time, that wasn't the
No.
case, right? They they
Right.
they were really up against the ropes. They were basically about to go bankrupt, and they're still hurting to this day. They've closed all sorts of arcades and stuff. A lot
Yeah.
of their
And that's
arcade
with being
arcades have shut down in Japan.
I mean, that's with being owned by, Sammy Holdings.
Yeah, so they're still not back where they were at right around the days of the Genesis, which was which was pretty much their heyday. The Genesis was the heyday of Sega because the Master System, while it performed well enough to keep them in the market, vastly underperformed the NES. The Genesis damn near beat the Super Nintendo in the United States, but still fell significantly behind in other markets, particularly Japan. So they were still kind of a distant second at the end of the day. When it came to the Saturn, they weren't even really that high up on the board. The N64, I think, outsold them. The PlayStation outsold everybody, and totally shook up the market. And then they brought out the Dreamcast because around that time they had spent so much money and their arcades were starting to tank that they were hemorrhaging money in every single aspect. They didn't have a leg to shore themselves up. This was their last great hope to keep their hardware business alive, to keep their arcade business alive. Yeah, they were in super bad shape, man. That's one of the reasons we wanted to talk about what was going on before we started getting into this console. Because while it's an amazing console and we love it, and it's probably got a better library than a lot of modern consoles. I would say the NES would have almost as equally a strong library. I'd say the Genesis is probably close, but I think the Dreamcast one's better. I definitely think it's probably better than the Saturn, even though the Saturn didn't have a whole lot of misses because it was primarily made by Sega's internal team, because they didn't have a lot of other people developing games for it. At the time, it was primarily Sega driving everything on that one, so everything was hitting their quality specs. They had a lot of good first-party stuff coming out, kind of like what you look at when you look at Nintendo. Like when you buy a Nintendo console these days, you're buying it for first-party games, right? Because
Right.
you want those titles, you want the stuff made by Nintendo and their internal teams. That's what you want. In a lot of cases, that's what a lot of us legacy people want out of PlayStation too. But they tend to drive more off of sports game sales and Call of Duty. So you had a lot of that going on, and a lot of that DNA was there in the Dreamcast because they were heavily the underdogs still around that time. Because while the Jaguar was pretty much close to dead around the time that the Dreamcast launched, because that was again it's one of Atari's last gasps to try to save their business for a while, and they're still around, just in a different form. They kind of took a similar tack to what Sega eventually ended up doing. You had Sony freshly coming into the market, kind of Nintendo making their own worst enemy there because they had a partnership that fell through. And they went with CDI, and Sony said, screw you, we're going to make our console anyway, and came out with the PlayStation. And then you had the N64 that had all Nintendo's creativity and all their first party people behind it, which, while it didn't age as well as other consoles, still sold a ton and was probably one of the best party consoles of the era because it had 4 players from the start, which the Dreamcast did too. But a lot of their games were built for multiplayer, like local multiplayer. You're looking at like Turok and Mario Kart and 007, all built around multiplayer. Diddy Kong Racing, the list kind of goes on with like 4-player games that you could play on one screen on that console. So if you wanted multiple people to play, that was kind of where it was at, right? It was a great console for that. And it had a lot of their games like Ocarina of Time and stuff like that to boot. Star Fox 64. You had tons and tons of heavy hitters on there that were drawing people to that console, regardless of the card expense.
Yep. So going back to the launch lineup, which is sort of an amazing launch lineup.
A phenomenal launch lineup.
It really was. And by the way, one quick thing, one modern thing. Somebody just messaged me with this. The Retro Fighters, I guess a company called Retro Fighters, is making a Dreamcast wireless fight controller.
That's fun.
Let me.
Dreamcast should release Sonic CD on their system. It may have sort of possibly saved Sega. I feel like Born's having a little bit of fun
yeah, yeah.
See, I really thought Sonic Adventure was something special. I never played the second one, but I thought Sonic Adventure was pretty amazing.
It was. It's my second favorite. I mean, I know he's kidding, but it is my second favorite Sonic game. Sonic CD.
Anthony, I'm not sure what this has to do with the topic. I go by Nick, and he's Mike. Hi.
It's right there on the screen.
Welcome in.
Hi, Anthony. Here, I'm gonna put this in the chat for you to take a look at. Should I put it in the chat or in the Discord? What's easier to?
It doesn't matter. I can pull it up either way, I think.
Okay. Where's the? Here we go. This company makes this controller, which I do need to get.
We got rid of my Pixel!
When it's back in stock.
Were you playing Squirrel with a gun again today, Pixel? That's another one I need to pick up and play.
Pixel! What's up, Pixel? Sister Kitty in the house.
Okay, that's kind of fun. Hold on, let me flip this over to
So this is I would love to get this controller, but it's always out of stock.
I don't think I can zoom. No, I can't. Okay, here we go. That way it looks a little bit bigger on the screen.
It's a wireless
Um,
Dreamcast controller.
Anthony, I'm married, and I'm not gonna answer personal questions. And if you keep asking personal questions, like trying to get like more like direct info, I'm going to ban you. So enjoy the conversation or leave. I I don't know how else to explain this to you, Anthony. Have a great evening, though. Okay.
Yeah, check that out.
Well,
That
that's
so
a cool
this
little controller.
and it's
Kitty pounds.
Kitty Lake. What's up, Lake? What's up, horror? Um,
What were you playing today, Pixel? Were you doing Squirrel with the Gun again? I didn't catch it before I started streaming. What's up, horror?
now they make. Let me double check. So they sell. Go to here. Let me give you this link. Because they here
No,
are
you're
all
good,
the
Scrambles. It's just he's being a little too weird.
all
Tower
right.
Unite. Okay.
So they make the regular Striker DC, which is wired, but then they make this. They make the Striker DC wireless, and it has a dongle for VMUs and for like save games and stuff.
Interesting.
And now they make this new DC D6 fighting game wireless. So it's got the 6 buttons, the 6 button layout like a Genesis controller or a Saturn controller. And interesting, it does not have.
Wow, that looks very okay. So it's a Brawler N64 controller. Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and they make some
And
cool
they make
control.
a
I mean, this
GameCube
company makes.
version too. That's kind of cool. These guys
Yep,
remind me of 8-Bit a little bit.
a little bit. If you click on the Sega ones, those are the ones, the Dreamcast controllers. So that one
Okay,
there, the
that's not a
D6,
bad pad. Not a bad looking
it's
pad.
brand new. They just announced it, and it's already freaking sold out.
What's funny is this looks exactly like
A European
want to get
Saturn
one sitting
controller.
around here that's made by. It's not Mad Cats. Um, Damn, I'm forgetting the name of the company, but it's super light and it's laid out exactly like this. That's interesting.
It actually looks.
Saw
It
one of the
actually looks
6-button
a bit.
wireless fighting
It actually
controller
looks a
coming out in
bit like my.
2025.
It
I
looks a
got a
little bit like.
batarang on him. Nice, Batman.
Oh, you know what? He was like, you know what? Screw it. He bataranged him.
I think he just got his messages. Well, Batman just deleted his messages, and I think everybody's gonna jump on him if he starts some more crap. He's just acting a little weird. You don't
Yeah.
need to be that
So
personal on
this
here.
is my Retrobit Saturn controller, and it looks a lot like
I've
that.
seen one of those. You're probably gonna be silent on this, but you put that up again so people can see it better. Yeah. They didn't hear that. They're not hearing you on this one for whatever reason. I don't know why.
So so it looks like that. So I'm very interested now. It looks like I can get the wireless one that's not black,
Oh,
but
it's JDA. Good to see you, man.
JDA. Now you're welcome, guys. I'm not for everybody on all platforms. The only difference is that the Striker DC wireless has the analog stick, and the fighting stick, the fighting pad does not. So, but I kind of
I've got
want
a couple of different fighting pads laid around here, and I'll show you some of those, Mike.
I
Because if you
kind of
want to
want
start
that.
getting into fighters, we need to talk about like what you want to use to play, what you're comfortable with, that kind of thing, so that you can kind of figure out, how you want to
I
play.
kind of like. So I like my XRK tank stick.
That would probably work.
Oh.
See, I've got the Genesis one, but I find it maps things weird. Like if I'm using like a RetroArch, it maps things in weird ways, and it's a pain in the ass to remap them to the way I want them laid out for like a way I'd expect a Genesis 6 button to work. I'm told if you use an FPGA system, it maps them appropriately. It maps everything like it would be on the Genesis. So if I do
Oh, snap.
another like retro console build, it'll probably be FPGA, partially for that reason alone. You know,
So this retro this
cool, but man,
retro
I appreciate it,
DC
man.
this Striker DC wireless controller, it's $50. I'm gonna get one because it not
It's
only
not a bad price, man.
well
Honestly, for those kinds
it's
of for those kinds of sticks, those pads.
what's
What from what I'm seeing on that pad, it's Hori,
it's
HORI.
not just
They're the ones
but
that
it's
make the other
not
one. They
just
have this
that. Can you
wired,
bring
and
that
that
site
one's about
bring,
$39 to $50. So it's
bring
in the
that
same
site
price
back up
range.
real quick? Bring that site back up real quick
Okay,
because
hang on, hang on, hang on.
there's something else. There was so with sorry, how many freaking tabs do you have open? Good
There
lord,
we go.
man.
There we go.
Uh, so click on the Striker DC wireless, the one on the right. There's something else
Dude, I've
about
always
this
got like
controller.
35 tabs up. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. Well, you have a computer that can beast it. So not only is the controller itself wireless, but one of the things that make the Dreamcast, as we were talking about in my stream earlier, are the VMUs. Well, how would you do a VMU on a wireless controller like that? There are no VMU slots and there's no hole in the front of the controller
Right.
to show it. Scroll down because this is where this thing gets cool. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. It has a wireless dongle
Huh.
for the VMU. So you could sit the VMU next to you and still be able to use it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this works with the original Dreamcast hardware, right?
Yes. That's the whole
Okay.
point.
That's
It
nice.
is yeah. And that's the this is so neat.
Well, says Beverly on the fans page. I'll never tell, sir.
Oh, so I want this controller badly. I need to get this controller. I think I'm gonna because I stream Dreamcast games.
Wonder who has the most controllers between Mike and between Nick and Mike.
I've got a ton of controllers.
I don't know. It's
I've
probably
got
going to be
8 Dream.
close.
I
I've
mean,
got a
I've got 8
closet full of
Dreamcast.
them from
I do
like
too.
360 and PlayStation, and then I've got like a couple of Elite controllers floating around here, various different types, and
I
some
don't
for
have any
various different
Elites,
PlayStations, and
but I
tons of
also
arcade game pads and
but
hitboxes and arcade
since we're
sticks
talking
and
about Dreamcast, I also have the accessories like the fishing rod.
yeah, you've got the fishing rod. I never picked up the fishing game. I wasn't really interested in
And it
it. So
works. It works so well.
no, I imagined it worked fine. I just
It
wasn't
was
into
great.
fishing games. So
I actually like the fishing games. I
Geezer's
gotta say,
probably complaining how many controllers their TV needs.
yeah.
I don't have that problem, but my wife does.
So, part of my
Maybe
part of the
not
perks.
Galaxy. I don't know.
Man,
Like it would map things. It would map everything along the bottom. It would map some things to Y, and then like A and B would be mapped, like it was using like a Nintendo layout or something, like a Super Nintendo layout. It did things in weird ways that I didn't want it to do.
part of the perks of being a game journalist was the tchotchkes that you got from companies when they sent you review codes and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, since we're talking about the fishing controller, I bought the fishing controller, but they sent me Sega Bass Fishing, and they sent it in a tackle box that has. I still have this thing. Wait a minute, let me see. That has the Dreamcast. It's got the Dreamcast there, and then it's got the bass fishing sticker on it. I've had this
Okay, so
for.
it's an actual tackle box for the
It's an actual
game.
no, yeah, it's like a real life, and the game was inside of it, but it's a real. It's an
It's an
actual real
actual
tackle box.
tackle box. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not just a custom frame made
No,
for the game. It's
no.
an actual tackle box.
And I've had this. I've had this for almost 25 years now. But that's the kind of cool stuff that I used to get.
So what I'm hearing is JDA and Mike need to do like a dual fishing stream here. They need to
Oh,
tag team a
yes.
fishing stream. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Because JDA the other night was doing like an NES fishing game that actually looked pretty fun. I mean, for NES, it was actually pretty good.
No. So I've got that. I've got light guns, which you can't use because, of course,
Yeah, no
modern
CRT
TV.
TV,
Um,
no love.
I've got multiple of the Sega controllers. I've got multiple Mad Catz controllers, and be honest, my favorite Dreamcast controller, which is the one I was using on streamer earlier, is Mad Catz. I've got one from a company called Performance. Um, I've got I still have my microphone from Seaman. I still have that. I have my original Dreamcast Rumble pack. This was what did the Rumble. And I even have my main memory card is not a VMU like this. I have a 4 meg memory card. It doesn't have a face on it. Doesn't have a thing on the front that actually has a button on the side, and it's got 4 sets of channels, and it's 4 megs, so it's the equivalent of 4 VMUs worth of save files. So I have that as like my back memory card because the controller has 2 slots, and then my front one is the VMU for the screen. Oh. I will forever love my Dreamcast. I will forever we never really let me for here was the launch lineup for the Dreamcast. These were the games. Let me go back to Sonic Adventure, Soul Calibur, Virtua Tennis.
There we go. Okay. I was talking to you for a minute and you couldn't hear me, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's
Oh,
going on? Because I flipped over to this because Metal Torso had mentioned that Limited Run had a massive Dreamcast merge, and somehow like my mic got slightly disconnected.
oh, funny.
No idea. Check this out. This is Dreamcast merch that they've got on because it's like Sega's like birthday for the Dreamcast.
That's
This
pretty
is
cool.
some good swag. I'm not gonna lie.
That is some good swag.
Yeah, coins, pens, shirts, and then they're going into like all the other stuff that they've got up for sale.
Right, which I don't care about.
Right, but they've got like all
Yeah,
this stuff
but
here at the
that stuff,
top,
trading card,
trading
binder,
cards and sleeves, and the hat
storage
and the
box,
shirts
cardboard box.
particularly
Oh, a
tempting.
hat.
The VMU keychain's cute.
That is. No. All right. So while you're looking at that, here's the lineup, and I'll do it in alphabetical order. There were 18 games in the Dreamcast lineup. It is still to date the best lineup that has ever been launched. No one has launched it like this ever again. Arrow Wings. And Arrow Wings was made by I had a company called CSK. They weren't a big developer, but it was published by Crave. Huh?
Scrambles might have us beat on controllers. He's just listing off all his controllers, and it's a crazy list.
Oh, my man. He's going to make me do it.
Oh, God. Scrambles, you made Mike disappear again. It's a cool trick when we don't want him here, but we kind of need him here for the show. I blame you. Jesus.
are some of my controller scrambles.
Oh my god. I remember that when I finally ended up doing that as an oddity, man, because me and you were gonna like do that together, and then you had other stuff going on.
Here's my Dreamcast light gun by Mad Cats. I have in that box. I've got the Dreamcast steering wheel. The only thing I'm missing, which Carla, I wish I could still find, and I've never been able to find it again, is the keyboard. I have the mouse. I don't have the keyboard.
Acts like I blame Sega.
So, Arrow Wings was published by Crave. Air Force Delta, which was Konami.
Yeah.
Right. Blue Stinger, which was Activision. Kart Flag to Flag. So there were actually multiple racing games. Kart Flag to Flag, which was Sega, which was a decent game. It was a decent racing game. Hydra Thunder, which now, by the way, is owned by Microsoft, but back then it was Midway.
Yeah, their new release on that was part mobile game, part PC game was kind of...
Yeah. Hydra Thunder Hurricane will always kind of be my definitive. Monaco Grand Prix. Monaco Grand Prix 2, which was Ubisoft. Mortal Kombat Gold, which was Midway.
Oh, I forgot that was a launch title. That was a great
That was a launch title. Yep. NFL 2K, which is a story I told on the stream
Blitz
about
launch as well.
Blitz 2000 also launched on it. That was Midway. Pen Triicelon, which I was playing earlier. Power Stone, which of course Capcom. Ready to Rumble Boxing, which was also Midway. Was that Midway? That was also Midway. Yes, that was Midway. That was a great boxing game. Sonic Adventure, Soul Calibur, House of the Dead 2 launched on, and that's why I had the gun, because they launched House of the Dead 2.
That makes sense.
TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat, which was another racing game. It was not as well known. Published by American Softworks and CSK, I think was the name of it. Tokyo Extreme Racer, which I hated that game. It was Genki and Crave. It was basically driving around a loop in the dark in Japan. And Trick Style, which was kind of a pseudo. It was made by Acclaim. It was kind of a pseudo futuristic hoverboard game, which was all right. It wasn't.
Pixel, I appreciate you coming by.
Love you, Pixel. Love you, Pixel.
I appreciate you coming by. I've got to drop by the next time you do Squirrel with a Gun. That game is so funny, but it is so much more fun seeing you play it and just how much it makes you giggle.
I know. She giggles anyway.
She does, but you should have seen her in this one. I thought she was going to pass out. She was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe.
I missed too. I had a band rehearsal the other night while she was doing Uno in her Discord, and I missed that.
Dude, Squirrel with a Gun if you haven't seen it.
Huh?
It's just goofy fun. I mean, it's not trying to be anything it's not. You know, it's kind of like an average shooter game with a squirrel with a gun. But it's just funny how it all plays out. It's just like this silly, goofy game, and I love that. Okay, you were saying, by the way. Go ahead.
No, that was the 18 games in the lineup.
Okay. And then Tony Hawk ended up coming out for that at some point. You had Fantasy Star Online.
Oh,
that was a big title for them.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
and when it comes to the online games, there were some great online racing games too. One was called Speed Devils. It was made by Ubisoft. That was a very good racing game. It was online. Um, and Revolt was another one that was
I
on
never played
Dreamcast.
Revolt, but I've seen people stream that. That looks like a lot of fun.
It is.
It
It
was
is.
like
It's
an
tough to
RC
play
Pro-Am upscaled to like modern graphics.
and kind of front facing.
Yeah.
Um, there was another online racing game that that I need. Oh, Sega GT was their pre-answer, not pre-answer, but it was their answer to Gran Turismo. Sega GT was really good.
Mike, what you
Metropolis
doing on
Street Racing.
YouTube? What's up, Sir X Man?
What are you doing on YouTube? We're over on Rumble. I
We're
don't know
live
what
on
you're
Rumble
doing.
too, man.
Yeah. Anyway, Metropolis Street Racer, which I do have in my collection, was a great racing game.
Yep.
It's probably one of the better racing games, to be honest with you. Test Drive V Rally, which that's a game that okay. Test Drive V Rally will always hold a special place in my heart for two reasons. Number one, it's the first rally racing game I remember that not only had a cockpit mode, but had a track editor.
Yeah, I was about
And
to say Skies of Arcadia, Grandia
Skyler Arcadia.
2.
It also
Those
happens
those
to
were
be
two of the ones that were like huge for me in
yep,
the RPG department there. Fighting games were huge. You had Power
te-
Stone 2, you had the Tony Hawk
yep.
series. You had
Test Drive V Rally also, by the way, was my
yeah,
very first box quote.
yes.
So, which
Yes.
I so Test Drive Le Mans was their follow up. So you could race the Le Mans 24-hour race, and it was actually real time. You could actually race. So
Yeah, I was
we're not
trying not
talking
to
about
go
the
into
we're not
Project
talking
Gotham,
about the
Sir X
OG
Man,
Xbox
mostly because
today.
we're doing Dreamcast tonight.
Yeah, we're not talking about OG Xbox today, Sir X. Wake up. We're talking about Dreamcast.
Project Gotham's good though. I didn't
Project
like.
Gotham
That's
is
one of the few actual
fantastic.
racing games I liked.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But San Francisco Rush 2049 was another Dreamcast racing game that was excellent. I said Sega GT.
Vigilante 8 Second Offense wasn't really on mine, but I
Yes,
love
Vigilante
that
8 second.
game.
Yes. And along those lines, there was a Star Wars version of it too. And then speaking of Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which I almost played
I had
tonight.
that on Dreamcast. That was really, really good.
Yep,
That was
I
probably
I,
my
I
favorite
had it in
version
a
of that.
stack. I had it in a stack in case we got to it.
Yeah.
Looney
My
Tunes.
PDA Delete actually went through Vigilante 8 Second Offense. I can't remember if we went through a PlayStation version or a Dreamcast version of that one. I want to say it was
Sega Rally
PlayStation.
Sega Rally was not on OG Xbox X. Sega Rally Revo came out for the PC, and I think Sega Rally might have come out for the PlayStation 2 or 3. But Sega Rally 1 came out for the Saturn. Sega Rally 2, which I have, is out for the Dreamcast. Two other racing games that do not get the attention. I talked about them on the stream, and I stream them every once in a while just because they're so fun. Both by Infogrames. Looney Tunes Space Race, which was officially licensed by Warner Brothers and was phenomenal. And Wacky Racers,
I was
which
going to
was
say,
based on the TV show.
wasn't Wacky Racers on there? I never got to either one of those, but they look fun.
They are fun, and I will play them. I will play them just to play them sometimes. And of the two, I actually like the tracks on Looney Tunes Space Race better, but the actual number of tracks and the racing element of Wacky Racers is just phenomenal. So, there was Daytona USA, right? Daytona was on there. 18 wheeler, which I have up there on the sub.
Yeah.
18 wheeler American Pro Trucker, which was an arcade game. South Park Rally was on there.
I'm pulling up a list now because I'm forgetting like half of these that were on there because a lot of mine were like fighters, right? Like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3,
Yep.
Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive 2, I
Yep.
had a huge
I
blast
have
with
DOA
like
too.
all those. Um, and then like RPGs and stuff like that. Yeah, two Crazy Taxis on there.
Yep.
I think
One
I
and
might have had
two.
the first one.
Um,
Um, I
I
did love
have
Blue
both.
Stinger a little bit, but we already mentioned Blue Stinger. Apparently, Dino Crisis was on there. I didn't remember that.
I don't remember Dino Crisis being on there, unless it was Japanese only, unless it was import only.
Could have been. I remember
Um,
Evolution, World of the Sacred Device. I had fun with that one. That
Evolution,
was
and
fun.
I have Evolution and I have Evolution 2. I also have Grandia.
Grandia 2 is
Um,
amazing. I love that game. Skies of Arcadia is amazing too. Again,
Guys of
JDA the
Arcadia.
Leadsman going through that one and doing an amazing job streaming it. It's that's a
Yep.
tough game and a long game.
Bomberman. There was a online Bomberman
Yeah,
game. I don't have that one anymore.
Techromancer was another one
I
by
don't think so.
Capcom. It was another fighting
Yep.
game that I had on there.
Virtual On, which was on the
That's right.
Saturn, and
Virtual
they
On
brought
was
that.
out on there.
Yep.
We already talked
Um,
about Hydro Thunder. We mentioned that one already. There were multiple Tony Hawk skaters on there.
there was.
That's
Oh,
where
the
I
other game I
originally
was
got
thinking of
introduced to
from
Tony Hawk was
Ubisoft
on the Dreamcast.
was Pod Speed Zone, which was made, which was it wasn't a, it was made by Ubisoft, much like Speed Devils was, but
Yeah.
it was really, really good in online. Um, Another good fighting game from Capcom was Project Justice was on there.
I didn't think Project Justice hit Dreamcast. I thought that was PlayStation.
No, it hit
Did
Dreamcast.
it? I must
It
have
did.
missed that then.
It came out in 2001, I think.
Quake 3
Towards the
Arena,
end,
which
it
you
came
already
out towards
alluded
the
to.
end of.
Wow,
It
I didn't
came out
realize
towards the end.
Rayman actually hit the Dreamcast, but
Oh
it
yeah,
did.
it did. I have Ray, and I have it. I have Rayman.
Code Veronica, which I was not a big fan of, but that was another big title for the Dreamcast. But they also
They
got
had some.
Resident Evil 2, Nemesis. Yeah,
Yep.
Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. They got both of those.
Of course, Jet Grind Radio,
Yep.
Metropolis Street Racer. Um,
Yeah, Jet Set
Samba.
Radio was freaking amazing.
Yes,
Samba
I
de
had that on.
Amigo, that was another
Yep,
big
Amade
one that
Amigo was
launched on
on
there.
there. Yep, I have the maracas. I can't find the mat.
Shenmue was a huge game when it launched.
Yep.
That was a huge one.
There were some, and you had to get them. You had to get them import, but I had a couple of good wrestling games too.
Yeah, there were a few on there. Space Channel 5 is another one that a lot of people don't
Yep,
give a lot of love, but that was a
and I have that
cool
on
game.
import.
I never picked it up, but I looked at it and go, that's kind of neat.
Michael Jackson helped with that.
Yeah, he did a lot of the music for that.
Yep.
Yeah, I had Street Fighter Alpha 3 on there too.
Yep. So there's another game
Dreamcast
that
back then was the only place you could play Soul Calibur. That's the only place I remember it launching.
that's
And it
it.
translated from Soul Edge into Soul Calibur, and I think Soul Calibur 2 hit all platforms.
Yes, I believe you are correct. So I mean, I mean, there were multiple flight games, there were multiple racing games, there were multiple fighting games, there were multiple.
There were a ton of fighting games on Dreamcast. If you were
There
into
were.
fighting games, they had a crap ton of them.
Yep. There were Tetris games on there. I do have Tetris.
Yep. Ultimate Fighting Championship. I forgot about that.
UFC. I have
kind of
UFC.
debuted on there. And that
Yep.
was a good game.
I have it. Yep. Worms was on there. Worms World
Yep.
Party.
Virtual Cop 2.
Virtua Cop 2.
Yeah, a lot of these I'd forgotten until I was going through the list. This is why I generally wanted to start preparing this stuff so I could pull this stuff ahead when I had
And
to
it
pull as much
and
of
and
it
by
up
the
during
way, the
show.
other, so don't forget too. So we talked about Hydro Thunder,
Yes.
Arctic Thunder, and Four Wheel Thunder were also on there.
Yeah.
So those were there.
No, there was never really a version of Cruising on here, I don't think.
No,
There
because
on
Cruising was
there was on the
Nintendo.
64. 64 had Cruising USA, and I want to say Cruising
Was it? Well,
World
Cruising
Tour or
wasn't
something like
Cruising.
that.
Wasn't Cruising? Wasn't that Nintendo?
No, it was Midway.
Oh, it was Midway, wasn't
Midway
it?
did both Cruisin' and Hunter Thunder. That was their series.
Yeah, I'm looking. You're right.
But
It
I
was
don't think it
made
ever dropped under Hunter Thunder
well
did.
because it was public. Okay, so Cruis'n USA is a racing game developed by TV Games Inc. and published by Nintendo. It was
Ah,
first
okay.
released in arcades in 1990s. So Midway got the arcade port rights, but it was published. It was published by
That would
Nintendo.
explain it. Okay. That makes more sense. House of the Dead was one of his favorite Dreamcast games. Yeah, and Mike
Oh
had the
yeah.
gun for that and everything.
Oh yeah.
And Scramble said his friend who had the Dreamcast mainly had played fighting games, and that was me around that time. I was huge into fighting games, and Dreamcast was like a godsend for fighting game players and for RPGs. They had a
There were
ton of good Japanese RPGs for a long time on there, so you were getting like you were getting like PlayStation 2 level RPGs on the Dreamcast before the
oh
PS2
yeah.
ever launched.
There were also some good, solid Disney games. One of my favorites is Donald Duck Going Quackers. I,
I don't think I
I
ever saw them, but then I missed a lot of the Disney games on consoles, including the Genesis, and I think it's just because I just wasn't thinking. I was thinking they were just going to be cheap kiddo games, but going
no,
back and playing a lot of them, they're just good games.
no,
They're
they
just
are.
good games.
They are very good games. Dynamite Cop,
Thank you,
which I
Batman.
which I do play, which I do play when I stream from time to time. Dynamite Cop is another really good game. Um, they did have an ESPN International Track and Field. They did get a track and field game from Konami.
Okay.
Um,
I'm not sure how track and field would really. I guess you could make it work, but
yeah,
track and
you can make
field
it work.
games are kind of weird to me. Like it made more sense when you had the power pad on the NES,
Yeah,
because
but
then you're kind of like engaged with the game. But they're
yeah,
they're kind of, and I played a couple of them on PC too, like early PC, and they were always kind of weird there.
yeah. X Confidential Mission, which was
I
really
mean,
cool with
who
the
doesn't
gun.
like chocolate cookies unless you're allergic to chocolate? I mean, they're
Yeah.
just good.
But yeah, Confidential Mission with the light gun was really good. Um, trying to think, there's uh, just thinking of games out loud. There was uh, uh, I had a game, and I'm going to go back and play it. It was called. It was a point and click game called Stupid Invaders. It was about these moron aliens that landed in the middle of this like hick area, and they were being chased by some guy that wanted to capture them and bring them back to the government, and it was so dumb and so funny.
So it was an appropriate name, then you say?
It was a very appropriate name. I need to go back and finish that game. I had gotten pretty
Yeah, there it
far
is.
in
It's
it.
by Ubisoft.
Yes. Um,
Centers around aliens and their attempts to
remember,
return to
yeah,
space. However, bounty hunter, the stoic yet serious Polak, is sent by an evil scientist to target the aliens. Thus, Ethnos' attempt to explain his newest idea goes where the aliens are frozen solid by Poltuk's gun, which forces
yep.
Bud to retreat to the bathroom. Once he sneaks to the rooftop and around the house, the player progresses through a large surreal world within performing very specific and often absurd actions like melting Santa Claus and reducing him to green ooze.
I like when he gets caught, when the alien gets
That's
caught. Like I
weird.
just remember, the guy's
Sorry,
at the
I
top
had
of the
turned my
step.
volume down a little bit. It might be a little bit janky from.
Oh,
It might be like. Hold on, let me look at my sound settings here.
yeah. Um, that, there were just and there were some games that people didn't see that had some neat stuff like South Park Chef's Love Shack, which was a South Park. Um,
That ought to be a little bit better.
yeah, there you go. Like a party game that me and my friends. I used to have friends that came over, him and his wife, and me and Michelle and him and his wife.
Can
We
the
played
Wii U be
South
modded to
Park,
play
Chef's Love Shack.
Dreamcast games? I have no idea. I mean, I can't see a reason. Well, the only reason I can think of that it might have issue would be the GD-ROM disk, right? But since it's
What?
an ISO, if you can burn it, I mean, you could throw the emulator on there, maybe pull them off
Yeah,
of the
you
disk,
can
maybe.
emulate it.
You could
I'm
probably
pretty
emulate it.
sure.
I don't know if I'd want to do that on, like, say, Wii U, but curse you! Actually, we got to wrap up here in a few minutes because I need to
Yeah.
dart out here around like 10:30. So, I'll just wrap up by saying I do kind of dearly miss the Dreamcast. That was probably one of my. It actually was my favorite of Sega's consoles. I had the Genesis, and then I had the Dreamcast, and I thought the Dreamcast by far was the better of the two consoles. I love them both. I just like the Dreamcast better, I think, overall, when it comes down to the scheme of things. Um, I do want to dip more into the Master System now that I've gotten a little bit older, and dip a little bit maybe into the Saturn if I can find a good way to emulate it effectively. Because I'm not going to go out and try to get that hardware and try to get it working. I'm just not going to do that. Um, so I might do some of that like down the road. I don't know when. Um, but as far as everything else, I do have a video on both Rumble and on YouTube that covers the Dreamcast. Um, I will go ahead and try to get that link and post it in there, but that one has been up there for a while. If you look for Dreamcast on my site, you should be able to find it. But I'll try to drop a link in chat for those of you guys that are interested. And then I'll try to put it in the description of this if anybody's watching this in arrears. That way you guys can pop in and take a look at it. There it is. And it's not going to let me get a link. That sucks. Seriously? Huh. Anyway, I'll try to put it in here post. I don't want to hold everybody up on this trying to do this one silly thing. But
Yeah.
I have it on both my Rumble channel and I have it on my YouTube channel if you guys are interested in more details on the Dreamcast as far as the history and the back workings if you didn't get it from this particular podcast. But it's one of those that if Sega was to come back, I think they needed to come back and do something like that. It reminded me a lot of the GameCube where they tried to make things approachable and affordable for people to come in and develop, hoping they would get developers back on their side and to kind of prop up their business and continue to be a hardware dominant company. And much like the GameCube, it didn't quite work out the way that they had intended it. They gave everybody all the tools. They gave everybody the accessibility and affordability to be able to come in and just kind of build for it pretty quickly and rapidly. And people just didn't take to it. Either because of how the market was shifting more towards Sony than it was anybody else, or just the amount of competition and everybody not really knowing where they wanted to put their eggs. It just was beleaguered with problems from the jump. And it's amazing that we got such a stellar console with such a great library out of it for all the crap they went through and how beleaguered the company was during its run. Mike?
Yeah. I caught most of that. It's like your audio was going in and out. That was weird.
I have no idea.
I don't know how. I'm like,
I don't
yep.
know. It's just acting weird today. I don't know if my cable's gone janky or what.
I don't know.
I don't think the mic's going bad. This mic's amazing.
All right, repeat your last sentence.
I said it's kind of amazing at how good of a console we got for how beleaguered and how on the ropes that the console was during its entire lifespan and the company itself.
I attribute that to Peter Moore. He did everything that he could do to try to salvage that company. And
Mike is like, right? What? And everyone else is like, it sounded fun to my end. I don't know.
That's weird. So, but yeah, Peter Moore, he really.
I never tried
did
the
best
he could. Xerox, man. It's a Spawn
nice
game. I'd probably have fun with it.
Yeah. Where was that? There was a Spawn for Dreamcast, I thought.
Yeah, that's
I
what
could be
Sarachman was
wrong.
saying. It said it was for
Oh.
Dreamcast only.
And I also do have Nights into Dreams, of course. That's how I have my 3D controller.
Yeah.
I made one mistake in my life I wish I didn't make. And if I could take it back, I would. One day I was on a show and the guest was Dave Jaffe. And I was back before I realized Dave Jaffe was an asshole. Um, and I traded him my Christmas Nights disc, which I was never going to play. And I was like, whatever. I traded that to him in trade for him signing my Mickey Mania Sega CD cover. And now, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that.
Fair. I wouldn't have given away like a lot of my old consoles. I would have kept them. So everybody's got their own cross to bear there. But Mike, what you got going on this week?
All right, we're playing something tomorrow. I don't know what yet. We are playing something tomorrow, but we're going to talk first about the whatever this Sony presentation from Mark Cerny is, and then we're going to get to some gaming. Then on Wednesday, Peter comes back and does whatever it is he's doing. I think he's going to play some more Star Wars Outlaws. Thursday night is Thursday night at the arcade, which is my weekly Antstream arcade stream. And one lucky person in the chat is going to win a copy of Antstream Arcade and a 1-year subscription for the PlayStation.
Cool.
Yes.
The only thing
So
I have is I have a rare game experiences coming out on Wednesday. That'll be out on both. I have another longer form video. It's probably about 12 minutes, maybe 13, 14 if I cut in some more audio and just kind of like games play a little bit on it. I'm going to cover the history of like Mario, the character, a little bit in a little bit more detail. Somebody had asked about it, and I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad topic. So I kind of paused the one that I was sort of working on, or the one I wanted to revitalize on Diablo, in lieu of that, because I knew that one, I knew the Mario one would come together a little bit quicker than the Diablo one. So that'll probably be the next longer one that I do. I've got a couple of other shorter ones in the tank, and I need to start cataloging them because I think a couple of people have sent me some oddities. So I think there's a drive to kind of want like game oddities to come back. But if I bring that back, I want to have at least a couple of them in the tank so that I can bring that back and at least run it for like a couple months here and there by dropping one every so often. I don't think I can do it every week like I was doing it. I just don't think there's that many more for me to find, because the reason it stopped is I was having trouble finding new ones, quite frankly. And the ones I was finding seemed like I could have summed them up in a short rather than a 5 to 6 minute video. So it just wasn't really making a lot of sense to continue the series, which is sort of why it retired and I went a different angle. When I'm starting to run low on ideas, instead of trying to force something into a length, I'd rather retire it for a while and bring out like a new series and approach things from another angle. So that's kind of where that is. Um, so that's pretty much what's going on my channel. I do not know when regular streaming is going to resume here. If I do, it'll probably be on a different channel. It'll probably be a mix of modern and retro, and it'll just be kind of all over the board. I imagine fighting games are probably going to be a regular thing on there because I've really been enjoying getting into Street Fighter 6, and there's a couple of other games I would like to get in there. And the volume's a bit low again, or are you just behind on the stream? Because I just cranked up the volume like a mofo.
Yeah, I hear you fine. I hear you louder.
Hey, Ellie, how you doing? Good to see you. So yeah, that's kind of where MySpace is right now. It's mostly just been trying to get ahead on the regular videos that I do, and then trying to get more longer videos written up so I can start working on those and get a few more of those out each year. And then and streaming kind of eats into that, which is why I'm kind of of two minds to kind of deal with it, you know. So we'll see. I'm gonna bump this the rest of the way up. My mic just might be a little bit too far away, or my volume's a little low. I don't know. I'll have to take with it. Video's kind of funny. and I don't really want to scream in the mic. But that's all I got going on right now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. We're gonna try to start doing this every other week. I am trying to organize a little bit better. If you're interested in being on the show or have a topic for the show, please hit me up. Most of you guys know how to reach me on X. If not, I think Rumble has a link for it, and plenty of people can tell you how to get to me if you have a topic you want to cover. If you want to be on the show and you have a topic you want to talk about, let us know, and we'll try to arrange a time that works for everybody involved, and then we can get you on and we can try to do it that way. We're more than happy to have guests come on and talk about things and have a good time. I know at one point Xerxman wanted to do like a Star Trek one, which might be more me and him than it would be Mike. But that's also an idea for this. Are you a Trekkie? I didn't know you were much of a Trekkie.
Are you kidding?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So fine, you can come along too.
Oh my god. Oh man, do I have to whip out my old uniform?
I mean, maybe. Don't put it on while you're on camera, though. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I don't think I have it anymore. But I used to do the. I even used to do the conventions and the whole 9 yards. Oh yeah, I am well versed in Trek.
No Trekkie left behind, unless they're in a red shirt. Then they're just dead. And yes, you heard Star Trek. All right, guys. Okay. We're gonna get out of here.
All right, hold on. I am banning. Hold on.
Tonight. What?
I am banning Back from the Dead from this channel.
Hey, I'm kind of in the same boat with him. I like Picard better than I do Kirk.
I like Picard, but come on, look. In Star Trek Generations, who won the fight with Malcolm McDowell?
I think that was just Shatner being Shatner, but that's just me.
Exactly. Picard got his ass whipped, and Kirk...
I don't know how to reach out to you on X. I'll get with Mike on that, but I'm not doing that show without you. Because that was kind of your idea anyway. So I don't want to do that show without you, for sure. You're definitely on that one. That's 100%. I wouldn't even consider doing that one without you. See, now we have to kill Mario, because Cisco's a piece of crap. I hate Cisco. Yeah, Cisco, I think Janeway's better than Cisco, and I don't like Janeway.
I would take Janeway over Cisco. I would take Captain Quantum.
Your opinion is wrong, and you should feel bad. We should save this for that show, though.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You have anything else?
Go back seriously. I even go back to Enterprise, which I watched.
Focus. I like Enterprise.
With Captain Archer.
I thought Scott Bakula did a good job.
I think he did. I liked Scott Bakula. I liked Jolene Blaylock, who played T'Pol. I liked John Billingsley, Billingsley, who played Trip. That was a great cast. I was upset that it only lasted a couple seasons.
Yeah, me too. But there's reasons I feel like for that. But we'll get into that. And I got to get Paramount Plus and pick up on some of the other stuff too, sir.
I have no. So that's where my Trek dies off.
Yeah, that's where my Trek fades because I didn't get Paramount Plus. So there's tons of shows on there I missed. I don't disagree with that. I actually think that's pretty solid. The ones I know, I think Enterprise had one of the best intros. All right, we're gonna stop here because Trek's for another night. All right, we're stopping. Mike, you have anything else related to Dreamcast or what you're doing this week?
The only other thing was Friday night with Peter and Mike. We're gonna start playing some more Call of Duty.
Okay.
Starting in October when that game comes out, that's going to be our Friday night game.
RetroRoots, do it. We're probably going to do it. There's Batman's channel. If you guys want to check out Batman's channel, go out there, hang out with him a little bit. I'm going to bounce from here. I'm not going to do a raid tonight. I'm just going to get us out of here. Thank you guys for coming in and hanging out with us. It was a pleasant surprise to have as many people in chat as I had. I expected this to kind of go under the radar because it's been a very long time since I've done anything on the channel. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for checking it out, coming in and hanging out. I look forward to doing it again, and hopefully we will see you guys all soon. Check out all of Mike's streams, because that's all Mike does now is stream like 24/7. It's kind of his jam now. You can look for him to fall over dead with a controller in his hand on a stream, half eating his microphone at some point, I feel like. But, I'm going to be hanging out over here doing some editing. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night and get some gaming in.